When you get home from the beach, odds are you're gonna find sand in your kazi, in your hair, in your towel, in your shoes, and all that sand came from the beach to your house. But sand that is actually at the beach might have come from really far away. Sand is carried across the globe by wind and waves. So the sand at the beach you walk over is actually very old and very well traveled. Sand can be found in deserts, rivers, and at the beach. This sand is actually made of calcium carbonate, which we get from shells and skeletons of all kinds of reef-living marine animals, like coral and other microorganisms. Sand is formed when reefs break down, either by mechanical factors such as currents and waves, or by biological factors such as grazing fish. Sand is made up of all kinds of various elements. Through looking at what sand is made out of, we can tell where it's from. By looking at the color and shape of different sand, we can tell the environment of where it was formed. The different colors of sand are due to its location and the different components that the sand is made up of. For example, white sand beaches come from the breakdown of dead coral. Green sand, which can be found in Hawaii, contains basalt from cooled lava, which has large amounts of a green mineral, which is called olivine. Sand can also be made by the rocks and mountains that surround the oceans being broken down and pushed back into the water.
Hey, I have a question for you. So I get sand on the beach and at rivers and lakes. That makes sense. But what about sand in the desert?
This is my buddy Paige. She's at the beach a lot.
Hey.
Sand in the desert was first brought in by rivers and oceans hundreds, thousands, even millions of years ago. Hard to imagine because it's all dry now. But before it became so dry and inhospitable, there were lots of plants there. But as the soil dried up, they weren't able to hold on, and the sand spread all over the deserts. And so that's how the sand gets all across the desert.
Wow, good answer.
Thanks.
Ooh, sand's really hot.
Yeah, it's hot.
Oh.
So the next time that you're running around going ouch, ouch, ouch on your way down to the cool water, try and think about the fact that that very sand under your feet could have been stepped on by dinosaurs hundreds of millions of years ago.
My name's Nate Mendelsohn, and I'm a scientist. In my science degree, I studied mathematics, physics, and history and philosophy of science. I've been living in Australia for 19 years, but I grew up and down the east coast of America. I think that I've always been a scientist like I've always been a dancer. It's just sort of a way of looking at the world. And I never really stopped dancing. Now I just do it in the kitchen, mostly. New York style hip hop is the style of dance I usually do. Peace. There's lots of science in dance. If you think about dance in a certain way, it's nothing without music. And music is just math. For example, all the notes are different frequencies, and the bars, when you see music written like that, that's all math. So the more math you can learn, the more dance you could learn, in a sense. But the way I think of it is dance and science both are about the same business, which is learning the foundations and then learning to sing, and then learning to dance, or then learning to create. But first you learn it, and then you learn to play in it. Something unexpected about my job. My job is I'm a DJ / stay-at-home dad. And what people might not expect is the boring part is the DJing. The staying-at-home dad part is awesome. After learning about these things, the way that I look at the world has changed in that now I think the best knowledge you can get is knowledge that you don't learn by memorizing, but you learn by uncovering what's really there. You never take things for granted, you always keep digging. And the conclusion I came to was self-motivated knowledge is the most valuable knowledge.
280 centimeters, that is definitely better than last time.
The best part of being a scientist or looking at the world through a science lens is there's no limits to the way you can look at the world. It's all about breaking things down and then figuring out how they fit back together. My favorite physics fact is gravity, or F equals m1 m2 g over r squared. Because if we didn't have gravity, we'd all just fly away. If you don't have gravity, you're out of luck. I first became interested in science, I want to say when I first started looking at the world. It's just a way to see things. I've trained in a lot of different disciplines, just practice, practice, practice. Anything you want to learn, it's just, you got to practice.
I've lost this guy 3 times already.
One of my earliest memories is telling people that I wanted to be a paleontologist, and they would giggle because I was real little. A paleontologist is someone who studies dinosaurs. Some advice that I wish I had known when I was first starting out is don't ever let someone else tell you how you ought to be. You're the only one who can answer that question. One of my coolest stories that's travel and science related is a few years ago, I was DJing at a music festival, and some friends of mine, we caught a plane up all together, and I had to sit in the front because of the way it's all weighted. It was a small plane, and I wound up sitting next to the pilot, and there was a little, stick, just like his. But the pilot said, "Do you want to steer?" And so when I turned, I said, "Yes, of course." And when I turned, it didn't just move one-to-one like you're playing a video game or something. You feel the whole plane and your whole motion and the whole wind and everything move because it's controlled by a gyroscope. But I got to feel firsthand what it felt like to fly a plane and how flight works. I also got to turn and see my friends going, which was hilarious.
Did you know sand art is actually a style? You can be a sand sculptor. If you're interested in that, then stay tuned.
I love the beach. The water, the salty air, that relaxed holiday vibe. But there is one thing that gets me down. Those sad, dilapidated sandcastles that sometimes just litter the beach. You know the ones I mean. The sad, the broken, the lonely, the undecorated. But it's okay, because today I'm going to discover how to make the perfect, scientifically accurate sandcastle. It's not just a case of haphazardly slopping water and sand together and hoping for the best. No, 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 no. It's actually a very methodical and scientific process that you can tweak to make sure that your water to sand ratio is the very best that it can be. So what am I looking for in the perfect sandcastle? Well, you don't want the sand to be too wet or too dry. If you have a look here, you can see that the dry sand is a lot less sticky than the wet sand. This is because the water forms tiny little bridges between the grains of sand, holding them together. And this is caused by surface tension in the water. The sand can't be too wet. If we add too much water, the space between the sand gets filled and the bridges break. And decorations are important too. This is a delicate balancing act. It's serious business, guys. So this is something that physicists have actually studied. The magic formula for making the perfect sandcastle is roughly 8 buckets of sand per 1 bucket of water. Another way to find sand of a similar consistency is to look for the high tide line. If you find where the water has been, use the sand from there. It shouldn't be too wet or too dry. So here's a couple of other tips for you. Think about how high you want your sandcastle to be. The base of it should be about 3 times wider than your ideal height for your castle. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Buckets make very tidy sandcastles, but don't forget to shape and mold your sand so that it's exactly how you want it to be. Soft pack your damp sand into the bucket. If you pack it too firmly, it'll clump together, too loose, and it'll fall apart. Tools can really help give your sandcastle a smooth finish and add some finer details. Even the back of a thong can be an excellent leveler for the top of your sandcastle. Check with an adult first, but I went through my kitchen and got some excellent tools that I can use. I've got an ice cream scoop, a spatula, a paintbrush. Spray bottles can be really good too, and you can use a straw to blow the dry sand off your finished castle. It might seem weird studying sandcastles, but it actually helps scientists understand fields like civil engineering, physics, and even soil mechanics. Okay, so now we've got the science sorted, it's time to find the perfect design. Oh, I've got it. Oh, Sean, this is inspired. Oh. Well, I've been working hard on this all day, and I've got to say, it's magnificent. It's my masterpiece. It's just bigger and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. Welcome to Palace Sean.
Hi, my name is Sarah. This is SOS Ball, standing for Sarah's Ocean Search Ball. It basically just floats on top of the water, taking photos of what's down below. And it also is for researchers who want to find new species of animals or new species of plant in the water that they haven't discovered yet.
Hi, my name is Summer, and this is SQUID, standing for Sea Quest Underwater Investigation Device. It has small dash cam in it, which holds up to 5 hours of video footage. And it's to help people find sea creatures deep down in the ocean. Mine goes under the water. You put it in the water and it takes videos of the ocean, and it can go closer to things than humans can go.
I thought that the SOS ball could be a really good idea for recycling old devices. It's really weird how people throw out devices each year because they have a cracked screen or are an old model. So I went on the test and made SOS ball, recycling my mum's old device. It still has enough power in it to take photos, send data automatically, and it can tell its own gyroscopic position, which basically means it can tell what position it is in. So if it's on the side, it can tell it flips to the side. And that's how I made the SOS ball.
If I was to change something on my project, I would add a propeller to it, or some sort of mini submarine that could pull it along.
It took us around 2 terms to plan and build our project. And on the 3rd term, we were planning how we were going to get it ready and what if we could improve on it, and we really didn't have much else to do.
Summer, sea, sun and surf.
You mean stingers, sunscreen in your eyes and sand in your sandwich?
Yeah, that too. But did you know that the sand between your teeth, your toes, is actually really special and well-travelled? All the sand on Sydney's beautiful beaches came all the way from Antarctica.
Huh? Whoa, cool. Wait, hang on a minute. What? Antarctica? As in the cold, icy, desolate bit of land kilometres away all the way down south?
Yep, that's the one.
But hang on, that doesn't make any sense. Antarctica is freezing cold, doesn't have any beaches, and how did the sand travel all that way anyway? Not on a plane or a boat.
That's the cool bit. It didn't travel to get here. Australia did.
What? Now I'm really confused.
Well, about 300 million years ago, Antarctica was actually attached to Australia, New Zealand and Africa in one big supercontinent or landmass called Gondwanaland.
Africa as in rhinos, elephants and giraffes?
Yes, but they didn't exist back then. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, and a massive river the likes of which doesn't exist on Earth today ran across Gondwanaland. As the river gushed across the land, it left a really, really thick layer of sand in its path.
Okay, but that still doesn't explain how it got here.
Shh, let me finish.
But you always drone on. Hurry up. I want to get to the end of the story.
Well, then the river disappeared. That layer of sand got covered up with lots of other layers and buried and forgotten about. Then, about 55 million years ago, Gondwanaland split up and the tectonic plates that Australia and New Zealand sat on started to move north.
So they kind of had a falling out?
I suppose you could say that. A geological falling out. The layer of sand also became really hard and solid from the pressure of the other layers sitting on top of it. Remember, layers build up over time and the sand became solid sandstone, like you see at the cliffs of our beaches.
I guess it's easier to transport solid rock than it is sand.
Yeah, exactly.
But how did they turn it back into sand again in Sydney?
Well, over time the exposed sandstone cliffs get battered by lots of wind and rain and waves, and the rock breaks down again. And this process is called erosion.
Cool. Mystery solved.
Yep. Geology is pretty cool, and the sand between your toes is probably better travelled than you are.
Hey, I've been to Brisbane, Melbourne, Broken Hill, Singapore.
Whatever.
Hi, I'm Josh and you're watching Get Clever, and today we're hanging out with the rovers on Mars. Who says I don't show you guys some cool stuff? Let's go and check it out. So here we are walking along on the surface of Mars. Well, it's not exactly Mars. We're in the Mars lab in Sydney at the moment, but we've made it up to make it actually look a lot like Mars. This is potentially one of the areas that we might send people. But before we send people to actually land on the surface of Mars, we need to explore it with rovers like this one. These sort of rovers are being developed by people like NASA, through the European Space Agency, and even through the University of Sydney. So they've been trialling a whole range of different ways of navigating around the surface of Mars by recreating it here on Earth first. So at the moment on Mars, we have two operational rovers. We have the Curiosity rover, the nuclear-powered, 1-ton, laser-firing robot that's rolling around Mars, the Gale crater, and exploring and discovering more about the geology on the surface of Mars. We also have two other rovers, the Spirit and Opportunity rovers, which were twins that were sent. Now, one of them has stopped operating. However, the other has been operating well beyond its lifespan and continues to provide vital details about the surface of Mars to this day. So on Mars, the Curiosity rover uses a great big nuclear reactor to generate its power, but all of the other rovers use solar panels. So here we have an example of one of the solar panel rovers running on solar power, and the biggest concern that solar panel rovers have is the dust. The dust sticks to the solar panels and reduces their efficiency, so the rover has less power to operate, and it sticks because of electrostatics. There's so little atmosphere on Mars that the dust itself will cling to anything that it can find and block out the way that these rovers work. However, anytime there's a dust devil or some sort of wind that comes past, it will blow and clear these solar panels, and so the rovers will get their power back.
I love the beach, but I don't like the sticky sand that gets stuck all over you and your sunscreen and completely through your bag. Well, I'm going to show you how to make sand that sticks to itself and not you. It's called kinetic sand. Kinetic relates to motion or movement, so you can call this lively or energetic sand. All you need is a cup of fine sand, mine happens to be blue, a bowl and a spoon, 1 cup of soapy water, and 1 teaspoon of corn flour. First, thoroughly mix your sand and your corn flour in your bowl. Slowly add the soapy water to the sand and mix as you go. You only want it to be slightly damp. Then knead with your hands until it stays in the shapes that you are moulding it into. You won't need to use all your soapy water mixture, but if you have added too much and your sand's not forming into shapes, then add a little bit more sand and corn flour and mix through. My sand looks a lot like normal sand, and it kind of feels like modelling clay, but when you squish it, it turns into sand again. The idea is that the corn flour and soapy water create a mixture that coat each grain of sand. That's why you have to mix it well. And the sand grains like to stick to each other, so you won't get in trouble for bringing sand in the house again. Oh.